Assalamu alaikum. My name is Calisha Bennet, and I'm a mother of five children, and I homeschool four of those five children. I am an identity and success coach for Muslim women, and I support them with their faith and confidence. I also do public speaking workshops and community programs for Muslim women, youth, and different members of the community to help to work on their identity and to strengthen their faith and their concept of confidence in being Muslim. So I found that prior to developing my understanding of the inside out paradigm, I used to just very easily get caught up in the emotion of things whenever there would be, for example, conflict, whenever there would be situations where there were, problems that needed to be dealt with within the family or social networks. It would cause me a lot of turmoil, and I'd be really unsettled and really knocked by it. So I never liked that feeling, and I'd always think to myself, why do I feel like this? I don't want to feel like this, but I didn't know how else to not feel that way. That was kind of like my automatic, something external would trigger me and I'd get caught up in the emotional turmoil of it, even though I was really good at being a support person or an advisor. I would always take home the baggage of whatever the situation was that I was dealing with, whether in family or friends or community issues. So I used to carry a lot emotionally and psychologically. And within my own relationships, I guess the thing that used to bother me the most is whenever I'd feel like something was out of my control, like I couldn't fix it, which is quite common when you're dealing with other human beings. You can't control another human being. Whereas I thought that if you kind of control a certain environment, then there should be an ideal outcome. So I'd always have this idealized vision of how something should be or how a person should be because I've lined up all my ducks. So when things wouldn't produce the results that I'm planning for and making the effort for, it used to really knock me and really upset me. A lot of tears, a lot of distress, a lot of confusion, a lot of disappointment, a lot of expectation. So it was like I was constantly setting myself up to be disappointed, to feel let down, to be upset at everyone else. But at the same time, I'm also upset with myself for being so upset. So basically a hot mess, you know. So yeah, just feeling totally just out of control, because in my mind, if I can control the situation, I'm okay. And I know for myself that that's come from, my upbringing, my childhood, not having a lot of maternal comfort and connection, that I had to go into like survival mode of, well, if you take care of XYZ, you'll be okay. Your world will be okay. So I've kind of done the work in terms of understanding, why I am how I am, or why I was how I was, but it wasn't giving me happiness, coping mechanisms, or fulfillment, even though I was like personal development junkie, watching videos, reading books. Nothing quite did it for me to be able to feel okay. Physically, my health wasn't too badly impacted, but I think just the emotional turmoil was enough for me to not be feeling 100%, or to not be able to work at my optimum level. So it took a toll on my emotional well-being and on my productivity, and then just like creating a negative atmosphere in the home or with my loved ones that I didn't want, but I couldn't shrug it. Like I would just carry like a chip on my shoulder now because the situation is happening that I can't control. So alhamdulillah, my health wasn't too heavily impacted because I did do a bit of work and put energy into looking after myself in other areas of my life. But for me, like my Achilles heel, my weakness was my emotional resilience. That was my weakness. And it was just like, but I'm so good in all these areas. What's wrong with me in this area? Like I could not find the answer of what was wrong with me. Not saying that there was anything wrong with me, but it was like, why aren't I feeling good in this way when I have a good understanding of a lot of other aspects of life and I look after a lot of aspects of life, but this emotional side, particularly with relationships, it would just play up. It would just spark up every now and then, and it would bother me with not having the answers. So I ended up being like a bipolar parent. One aspect really good as a parent, really understanding and kind and loving and supportive, the parent I wanted to be. And then I'd have this other side where if under pressure or stress, I would regress to almost like the negative aspects of the parenting I grew up with, like, you know, the old autopilot. And this not very nice person would come out and I would like let myself down. And alhamdulillah, kids are so forgiving because sometimes I was a very poorly behaved parent. And sometimes rather than parenting from a place of, you know, being emotionally secure and then giving stability to the kids, I was the one who was emotionally unstable, channeling that onto the kids and then blaming them. I used to carry a lot of like blame, like you're making me, this whole language of you're making me upset, you're making me get angry, you're making me yell or raise my voice. And that's just awful language when I think back. It's such blaming, labeling words to be putting onto children. Like, I'm so glad I see the light now. Oh, the shifts are, it's like seeing the light. It's like seeing all shades of yourself, like even the shadowy parts of yourself that you were never able to acknowledge or realize before. And I think it's been really powerful because it hasn't kind of put blame on me as such. It's just said, you know, it's just taught me that it's just because my awareness hasn't been able to see the full picture, and that's okay. And that in my journey towards being able to see the full picture of, you know, any given situation, and you know, dropping expectation or dropping the desire to control an outcome and these sorts of things, that it's going to be a journey towards being able to just let those habits fall away. So it's been really amazing in not having to corner myself and say, you're like this and, you know, it's your fault and this is how you are. And it hasn't done that. So I like that it's done. It's been liberating. The awareness of the paradigm has, you know, liberated me from feeling bad about how I was and allowed me to now, and it was gradual, seeing glimpses of my true, I guess, okayness, that I'm always okay, even if there is chaos around me. And Allah has tested me in different ways since learning about the paradigm. And I don't think I would have been able to cope if I didn't know this psychological reality, if I didn't have this awareness. And like, I really feel so grateful that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala chose this time for me now, for it to come my way now. I wasn't looking for it. I didn't even know what to look for. But it has just released me from so much burden that I carried or that I put on myself. And like now, I just have a totally different stance on things that would have had just like wrecked me before. Like it would have just broken my heart. Now I just feel like I have this resilient heart, like that can wholeheartedly be in any situation, but still be okay and still be okay with Allah, and to just feel true trust in Him. I love that it has beautifully aligned with the Islamic principles of having yaqeen and trusting in Allah and submitting to Allah, you know, submitting to His plan. I love that because I don't think I had that strength of yaqeen prior to being aware of this paradigm. We have the theory of the concept, but the paradigm has allowed me to really experience that concept and to sit in it. And and it makes it that you can be blissful in a moment of chaos. Like, doesn't mean I don't get caught up. Sometimes I get caught up. Sometimes I start to have fearful thoughts, worrying about the future, and I'm like, but now is okay. So you're okay because now is okay, and the now is always okay in all of the situations that we've had. You know, if I told you some of the experience that I had, I've spoken to a few mums and stuff about some of the really intense like moments where it's like, you know, especially in motherhood, like, how did you cope with that? And I was like, at first it was that old feeling of like just pain, of like, oh my God, I can't live. This situation is so scary. And then when I was like able to, you know, allow those types of thoughts to fall away and sit in the awareness of the inside out paradigm, like the whole feeling of that fear and anxiety and worry, it just lifted and I just sat. And alhamdulillah, the situation did resolve itself without me actually having to actively do anything. And the good outcome eventually falls into place as long as you're, you know, not doing the wrong thing and not causing harm. And I think when we are not able to accept any given situation and we're constantly in a state of reacting, that is when we are at risk of causing harm to that situation and causing further damage. When we're emotionally reactive, coming from a place of fear or anxiety, these types of angles, it can end up being more negative and more damaging. It's allowed me to really just accept them for who they are and accept them as they are and how they are, even though sometimes day to day it's like a struggle, because you'll look at your child, especially once they start growing and have their own free will and they reach the age of puberty and they start making their own choices, and you're just like, oh my God, you're going to make that choice right now. And it's like, I can't control this child's choices. Like, I have to be okay and let go. And it's like, anytime I do switch back into trying to control or mold, it's met with it doesn't work. It actually causes more harm, and it creates a division in the relationship. But when I wholeheartedly put out the vibes and in my presence, I'm accepting my children as they are, how they are, that warmth comes back, the connection comes back. So it's like, the way the way I think about and view my children has a huge impact on what I'll say, the vibes that I'll put out, how I treat them, and then any expectation that I end up carrying. So it's really powerful to just say, love them as they are, as we did when they were born and they were in our little, in the palm of our hands, and we loved them as they were, in all their in all their beauty and in all their perfection in how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created them. Just the fact is, they grow up and they develop their own little minds doesn't mean that we have to then start putting conditions on how we'll feel about them based on their performance and what they'll do and whether they're behaving or not. Sometimes we can become very, harsh and rigid on our kids. My adult relationships, it's been an interesting journey, because adult relationships are like sometimes long formed patterns over time. And because I had this trait of, if you get everything done, line everything up, then you have this good outcome and you'll feel a certain way by that stage. Being able to, I guess, just let go of, again, that concept of expectation, and to be able to just like see a person for who they are and live in the moment with that person. It's opened up a lot of compassion for me, to be honest. I guess in my network, family members and relatives, I guess we call it, like, we have some badly behaved or people with bad habits, if you want to call it that. But I'll always try, be able to shift my thoughts to just loving them as a human being, and that everyone has some sort of pain and struggle, and everybody reacts in it in a different way. And my biggest goal now is to sit in, like, just loving everyone sincerely. And we all carry judgment almost automatically. The second you look at someone, there are judgments being made, but I don't want to hold judgments. Judgments might come, but I want them to pass, and I want to see people for their souls, like who they are. And at the end of the day, someone might outwardly look like the worst person in the world, making the worst choices, causing so much harm, but inside that person there could be this seed of a golden hearted person, and that's not for me to judge. So my journey is now just so much on loving others unconditionally in all my relationships. Even if I meet someone for the first time, I'll always want to think the best of them, and I think the best of them until they prove me wrong, kind of thing. By default, I want to accept everyone and be open to everyone, but I'm always just focused on my journey of my heart and the inside out paradigm. It empowers you to realize it all starts with you and it ends with you, and that your experience in life is going to be what you choose to make it. It's the way you choose to see it. You want to see the sweetness of life or have the bitterness of life. Up to you, up to how you want that experience to be. So I just want to have as much sweetness of life as possible, because I take the amana of life in itself very seriously, and I always strive to fulfill my responsibilities. But now I need to step even further into taking responsibilities for the experience of my life. Do I want to spend days where I'm moody, grumpy, taking things out on others, or do I want to spend it just being a pleasant, joyful person to be around that gives love, receives love, and is the embodiment of, the love of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Yeah, definitely. I think it's really important, because the work that I do is helping young people, Muslim women, with their identity. And if we think about identity, where does it start? It starts off with what you think of yourself and what you think of who you are. And someone who feels like they're struggling in their identity, all it takes is just a little switch to go off, where they realize, you know what, I can actually step into my fitrah of who I am, that is God-given, my worth, my value. I can just, with the shift of a thought, they can step back into their fitrah and be totally empowered and safe and secure in their identity. But it takes us as community workers and teachers to just point them in that direction, to say, how about we look over here and, ask powerful questions to open up, allow young people to open up and share who they are and what they're thinking. And, by, I guess, angling questions to be able to allow them to see these ultimate truths about their life and their existence and their purpose, hopefully that can, make an amazing impact in directing them towards that beautiful, strong and settled identity. I'd also do work with different faiths and non-Muslim children as well. And as we know, there's a lot of negative perceptions perpetuated by the media about us as Muslims. So in that work, I get to stand in front of them and say, gee, I wonder what you guys think of me. And they're allowed to say what they think of me, and based on their assumptions, they're allowed to speak the truth of what, their assumptions might be. And I'm not offended. They're allowed to say it. And then we experience a journey of learning together, where through awareness, they're able to shift their thought to realize and see me for who I am. And that empowers them to say, you know what, I might think something is a certain way, but maybe it's the total opposite of what I'm thinking it is. And it empowers them to know that, again, through simple awareness of the reality of what they might think in that given moment, that something which has been portrayed to them, a facade that has been portrayed to them, can be totally dropped, and they can see the truth if they want to be open to that. So yeah, it's been really beautiful to have this awareness and bring that into my teaching journey, particularly because it also prevents me from holding judgment and assumption on those children as well. And as we know, children learn best when they're given just like free rein to explore and be creative. Whereas if I came in again with expectation or an agenda or an expected outcome for what they should learn, that is not really being fair and just on those children, and they're not going to get the richness of that learning experience. I would recommend people to learn it, because I feel like if we really want to live a fulfilling, purposeful, enriched, joyful life, I feel like the awareness of the inside out paradigm is the only way to do that, because I've been looking for a way. I've found mentors, coaches, spiritual guides, books, programs. I've done a lot of learning and studying in so many different areas, trying to find what would just help me in that regard, and nothing has been able to do it for me. And the simplicity of the inside out paradigm, in just that light bulb moment of it finally going off, of like, where has this been my whole life? Like, it's so powerful and empowering. And I feel like it should be like a staple type of knowledge that, young people, children should be taught. It should be in schools. It should be in, leaders and community representatives should have this knowledge, because it needs to be shared, because that thought in the moment is what perpetuates, judgment, assumption, negativity, bigotry, racism. They all come from like made up thoughts in people's minds that are kind of protective and defensive mechanisms, as it was for me. My negative experiences in my life and in my relationships that I struggled with was because my survival mechanism was like, it was negative. It was a negative one, but it was what I thought I needed to do to survive. So what the inside out paradigm does is it says, let your defenses down, because you are enough, and your the power of thought in the moment can help to open up this beautiful perspective of life and existence and the people around you. So I don't know, it's the key to world peace. What can I say? I would recommend it for everyone, children, youth, men, women, people in relationships, people not in relationships, people of all faiths and religions. It's just a universal truth that applies to all of us. And it's absolutely empowering. And we all deserve to be empowered. So we all deserve to have this knowledge, or if we do have it, we should be sharing it with everyone around us. For me, in wanting to be a coach of the Inside Out paradigm, again, I've always had the principle of whenever I learn something that I find beneficial to myself, it's now a responsibility to pass that on. And I guess just what it's brought to my life and given to my life, obviously I want to share it with others. And because I already work with people, I work with women and youth, and I'm so motivated, I'm so inspired to want to help to uplift them spiritually, emotionally, psychologically, because these are all infused together in the being of a person. The Inside Out paradigm, I know, is going to be a pivotal tool in truly allowing each person to see their own potential, to see the truth of who they are, and to really just be a positive, strong, vibrant being in this world. So we just need to put out more good people in the world, and the Inside Out paradigm is going to help that. Instead of us being so down on ourselves and feeling guilt and blame and feeling like we're so stuck and feeling bogged down, what the Inside Out paradigm does is it lifts all that off each person so we can truly be in this world and fulfill the purpose of being responsible citizens, giving back to society, looking after this planet. If we're so bogged down with our thoughts, how can we give back and how can we contribute when we're just stuck in our thoughts, in the paralysis of limiting beliefs and negative thoughts about ourselves or the world around us?